Have you ever felt invisible? Like your voice didn't matter, like you were just passing through life in silence? What if I told you that your silence might be the very thing God uses to crown your purpose? Welcome to Biblical Stories, where ancient voices rise again, where forgotten hearts beat with relevance, and where the silence of the past echoes loudly into your present. If you're searching for truth, identity, and purpose through real, raw stories of faith, this is your place.
She wasn't born with a crown. She was born into exile, an orphan in a foreign land, raised by a cousin and surrounded by shadows. No throne, no privilege, no promise. Just silence. And yet, somehow, that silence was sacred. It shaped her. While others shouted for attention, Esther listened. She watched. She waited. In the stillness, she was becoming. Not by accident, but by design. God doesn't need noise to begin a calling, he often begins with silence. And Esther. She learned to hear him in the hush of loss, in the quiet of obedience, in the absence of applause. She didn't ask to be noticed. She didn't beg for destiny. When the summons came for the virgins to be presented to the king, Esther didn't chase the crown, she obeyed the path. Her beauty didn't speak louder than her character. She won favor not just with eyes, but with hearts. The eunuch assigned to her gave her more than what she needed, not because she demanded it, but because she carried a presence. There was a quiet grace about her. A kind of royalty that didn't need a title. Even before the crown touched her head, she walked like she belonged to something greater than the palace. Every step into the royal courts was a step away from the girl she used to be. But Esther never forgot where she came from. Her Jewish name, Hadassah, still bloomed in her memory like a hidden root. Even as queen, she carried her past like a sacred secret. Not out of shame, but out of timing. Because some truths must be hidden until the right moment. God's strategy often looks like silence. And when you're chosen, the crown doesn't always come with clarity, it comes with weight. With whispers of purpose. With the ache of a deeper why that hasn't yet been answered. When Haman's decree fell like a death sentence over her people, Esther stood between two worlds. The crown on her head and the truth in her blood. She could remain hidden and safe, or she could rise. And rising meant risk. But this is where her silence became strength. All those years of waiting, of listening, of obeying quietly, they weren't wasted. They built her spine. They trained her for the throne. Esther wasn't just beautiful. She was bold. And boldness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it walks in silence, straight into the king's chamber, uninvited. She fasted. She asked her people to fast. She didn't rush. She prepared. Esther understood something we often forget. Before you face a throne of man, you kneel before the throne of God. And that's where true favor is found. Her courage wasn't impulsive, it was intentional. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to redeem. Her silence became intercession. Her presence became protection. And her identity, once hidden, became her greatest weapon. She was Jewish. She was queen. And she was exactly where God needed her to be. When she walked into the throne room, she knew it could mean death. The law was clear, approach the king uninvited and risk your life. But Esther wasn't moved by laws, she was moved by purpose. And purpose is louder than fear. When the king extended his scepter, it wasn't just grace for Esther, it was grace for an entire nation. In that moment, the girl who had once been silent became the voice of salvation. The orphan became the advocate. The unseen became unforgettable. We often admire Esther's courage, but forget the cost. She gave up safety, comfort, image. She surrendered her silence, not to be heard, but to make others heard. Her story reminds us that purpose isn't always loud. It's often quiet, obedient, hidden. It looks like waiting when everyone else is running. It looks like trusting when you can't see the full picture. Esther never saw the full plan, but she trusted the God who held it. And that trust turned a crown of gold into a crown of impact. Esther's story isn't just about royalty, it's about revelation. A revelation that sometimes, the most powerful voices are the ones that waited longest to speak. That obedience in silence prepares us for influence in crisis. That the throne God calls you to may not look like what you imagined, but it will always fit the shape of your obedience. Esther didn't become queen the day she wore the crown. She became queen the day she said yes to a path she didn't choose. And that yes changed history. She is the reminder that silence is not absence. That quiet seasons are not wasted ones. That sometimes God hides us not to punish us, but to prepare us. Esther was hidden for a reason. Protected in obscurity. Grown in humility. Crowned in surrender. And if he did it with her, he can do it with you. What if the silence you're living in isn't rejection, but refinement? What if you've been chosen too? You just haven't seen the crown yet. Maybe you're in a season right now where no one sees you. Where your efforts feel unnoticed, your prayers feel unanswered, and your dreams feel buried. You wake up wondering if your obedience is actually leading somewhere, or if you're just circling in the dark. But Esther's story reminds us, God doesn't waste preparation. Even when it's silent. Even when it hurts. The silence isn't empty. It's full of strategy. Full of sacred steps no one else sees. When God is silent, He's not absent. He's aligning everything so that when your moment comes, you're ready to carry the weight of the crown. Esther's journey wasn't about ambition. It was about assignment. She didn't ask to be queen. But when the door opened, she walked through it with holy fear. Because she knew the role came with responsibility. Being chosen isn't about being elevated, it's about being entrusted. And God entrusted Esther with influence that could not be earned, only stewarded. Influence that would save a people. Influence that would rewrite laws. Influence that would echo through generations. And she wielded it not with pride, but with prayer. Not with dominance, but with discernment. That's the kind of leadership heaven honors. What would have happened if she stayed silent? If she let fear win? If she believed the lie that she wasn't ready, or worthy, or capable? Mordecai's words still echo, perhaps you were born for such a time as this. It wasn't a compliment. It was a call. A reminder that this moment wasn't about her comfort, but her calling. That she was positioned not by chance, but by providence. And that if she didn't speak, someone else would. But she would miss her assignment. Esther chose to answer. Not because she felt brave, but because she knew who was with her. And isn't that what courage really is? Saying yes when you're still scared. Trusting when you don't understand. Moving forward even when the path isn't clear. Esther teaches us that boldness isn't the absence of fear, it's the refusal to let fear have the final word. When she approached the king, she didn't know what would happen. But she knew who had sent her. And that was enough. It always is. Your purpose doesn't require clarity to begin, it just requires obedience. Esther used her voice wisely. She didn't storm into the king's chambers with anger or panic. She prepared a banquet. She honored his position. She waited for the right time. Wisdom guided her words, and patience framed her plan. Because influence without strategy can destroy, but influence rooted in wisdom can save nations. Esther shows us that you can be both soft and strong. Both respectful and relentless. She didn't lose her femininity to lead. She led from her identity. And that's powerful. Her strategy worked. Haman's plot unraveled. The king saw through the lies. The people were spared. But Esther didn't stop there. She secured their protection. She wrote new laws. She ensured that their future was defended. She didn't just fight for a moment. She built for the next generation. That's what real purpose does. It doesn't just seek rescue, it seeks restoration. It builds legacy. It leaves a mark. And Esther's mark still stands. Every Purim celebration echoes her courage. Every Jewish child knows her name. Because one girl dared to rise. And what about you? Maybe your crown isn't made of gold. Maybe it looks like a job you didn't expect, a child you weren't planning, a ministry you never saw coming. Maybe you feel like Esther, quiet, unsure, chosen in a way that feels heavier than you imagined. But like her, you are not alone. God never calls without covering. Never assigns without equipping. You may feel hidden now, but your moment will come. And when it does, all the silence will make sense. Esther is proof that your past doesn't disqualify your purpose. That being orphaned doesn't mean being overlooked. That exile doesn't cancel destiny. In fact, sometimes it's the very soil where purpose grows deepest. Esther's beginnings were broken, but her ending was royal. And that arc isn't unique to her. It's the pattern of heaven. God raises the humble. He uses the unexpected. He takes what the world sees as weak and reveals his greatest strength through it. So if you've ever felt forgotten, remember Esther. If you've ever wondered if your story matters, remember her silence turned into salvation. And if you're waiting for your crown, remember, she waited too. But when her moment came, she was ready. Prepared in the shadows. Strengthened in surrender. Positioned in obedience. And when God called her, she answered not with noise, but with holy boldness. And that answer changed history. Before we close, let this be more than a story you heard. Let it be a seed planted. You were not born at random. You were placed on this timeline for a reason. And like Esther, you are not forgotten. You are chosen. Even if the world can't see your crown yet, heaven can. So stay faithful. Stay listening. And when your moment comes, rise.
If this story spoke to something deep inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Let someone else know they are not alone in the waiting. And if you want more stories like this, raw, sacred, and full of divine purpose, subscribe to Biblical Stories. This is just the beginning.